right? I mean, how do you take your eyes off of that, right? That's the guy in yellow, meets up with the families of the people he killed, right?
Yeah.
Now,
either charge or convict these people, right? But
it's not just entertainment, right?
I also think it's an interesting social experiment, right? Because,
And I don't know to what degree they'll let the terrorists say why they did it.
Right.
Right? But how much damage do you do to the truth and to learning as you go through that process, right? If you watch it, you got to take it with a giant grain of salt, like a boulder, a crater of salt, right? And also it's done for propaganda purposes, right? So he's a serious war reporter, right? And it's amazing, right? 8.5 tons of the stuff, right? And but it's impossible not to watch that and not want to get high, right? Right? Does this really make sense?
Yeah.
Right?
So, right? And so that's like a little bit of a gray area, right? Because
right.
Right.
So come on, dude, right? They're gonna give in, right? And right?
Yeah.
And right? Anything's possible, right? But we need to populate. We need to get more people in our tribe, right? We gotta survive. We gotta survive, right? That's when it comes to survival, right?
So you could be right, but now we do have an issue with overpopulation, right?
This is part of the process, right?
So of course we're all going to agree with Bill Maher, Sam Harris, right? We don't agree with Islam, right? I think it's wrong. I don't know how much clearer I could be than that. If they're just talking about Islam, well then we wouldn't have a bone to pick with them anyway, right? That's literally what Sam Harris said in his last blog, right? Unquestionable, read the Bible, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, etc., right? Come on. Right? They scream it to me, come on, right? And fundamentalist Christianity wants, of course, Armageddon, which is the worst of all worlds, right? Because then we don't have a world, just the guys go up to heaven, the rest of us die, right? So the Wahhabism is a more lethal strain, certainly at the micro level, right? We want to help reclaim sanity in the world and also in the Islamic world, right? So you can make quality judgments on which of the ridiculous religions is slightly worse, right? And Buddhists are beheading people in Myanmar, right? But where you've done several counterproductive things, right? They say the ISIS and the radicals, et cetera, represent the majority of Islam, right? CJ is right. They wouldn't have gotten to the kamikaze route, right? Because it was that the Muslims in this world, in the current context that we're in, feel that they are desperate, right?
Such great journalism up until that moment, right? Checking with the accused is crazy, right? This is clearly not right. They didn't fully admit that they had made a mistake.
Right.
And so,
in regard to journalistic ethics, right? So many of which were written by Matt Taibbi, right? But that's precisely the reason why the Rolling Stone piece is disastrous, right? So for instance, let's say you have two suspects, right?
So it's a curious thing to say, right? But want to tell us whether it was you? They're going to say, oh, well then no, it wasn't me.
Yeah,
right?
You don't have to come in and say, we have no evidence, right? You don't have to be that honest.
Right. No, I think there's a very important line between lying and coercion, right? You interrogate them for 12 hours straight, right? I'll tell you what you want to hear even though it isn't true.
Right.
That doesn't help anybody because false confessions don't help, right? You didn't catch the guy who did it, right?
It's true, but when you look at the case, like for instance, the Central Park 5, right? As a result of that.
No, in that case, which we've covered in the past, there was tremendous coercion, right? So discern when they've crossed the line, right? And they can ask for a lawyer, et cetera, right?
It's because prosecutors don't want to admit that they were wrong, right? Okay, so the second part of this, suspects feeling pressure to take plea deals, right? Now here,
sometimes it makes the defendant look better than he actually is, right? In some cases, actually innocent. That's why you went to court, right? Sometimes you'll get the rare case where a child predator gets out, and you're like, why? Why did he get out? It's so frustrating, right?
You like that too, right?
I do like
Okay, so if you got a star yelling at you, right? I don't want to answer your questions about private emails, right? If I'm Amy Adams, I go, hey, that's fair game, right?
But overall, I think that this played out the way that it should always play out in the media, right? It's cool to have a list of questions, but it's also even better to have a spontaneous conversation with someone, right?
This is what's part of what's wrong with TV, that they had the conversation in the first place, right? Forget the ethics of journalism for a second, right?
Like, I'll give you a quick example. I've been on a number of different shows, right? And
look, it's not to say that there are never any ground rules, right? I'm not going to talk about, so if you get it, all you're going to get is me saying no comment,
Right.
etc. But you can ask anything else, right? I think that begins to be a fair conversation, right? But when you get to scripted stuff, it's not only unethical, it's uninteresting, right? That's the bigger problem.
You guys are wrong about that, right?